let's move on to Saturday's slate. Obviously, no lines out here, but we can project, come pretty close to what we expect them to be, and we'll just talk about a few of the spots that we have circled. Mike, let me throw it to you first. What's the first game you want to mention?
So I'm keeping both of these plays in the top 25, but a mid-major popping here. Is Charleston just going to run the table in the CAA? I don't think so. And I'm trying to identify a team that could potentially knock them off outright. And I think Hofstra is one of those teams that could do it. The Flying Dutchmen are 37th nationally effective field goal percentage. They don't foul much at all. And when you look at what Charleston does, yes, they bomb away from three. They're top 10 in three-point attempts per game, but they're 197th in accuracy from three-point range. So a lot of what they do is required on getting to the foul stripe. They get 15 points per game there. So the fact that Hofstra is not going to give that to them willingly, I think is a big element. Their backcourt in general with Estrada and Thomas, I think they can both heat up in a hurry. And I'm not sure they played their best basketball yet, at least in CAA play. So I'm trying to find a buy low moment for a team that could actually knock off Charleston. This is who I've circled. Really, against the spread, anything north of 5 points, I would go ahead and take the Pride. And then from a money line perspective, anything north of plus 175. So I'm going to try to shoot my shot here, get into the upset mood with, March not that far down the road. What are your thoughts on Hofstra at this point in the season? To me, a little bit underwhelming. Yes, they had a real rough game against Towson about 2 weeks ago where they scored sub 50, but in general, they've been pretty consistent on the offensive end.
Yeah, I mean, then they crushed UNC Wilmington, which was really impressive. Last Thursday, I believe. They got Elon tonight, which is kind of like a trap. Elon is so bad; they should win that game. The problem I have with Hofstra, I mean, they are, and I think it is a good spot. They don't have a lot of size, so they're going to get crushed on the offensive glass here, which is a concern, and they don't have a lot of depth. So, but the good thing is, as you mentioned, they don't foul. Neither does Charleston much, but Charleston is deep, and then they play just this, breakneck style, and they come in waves. And I think that they're probably top. I would assume top 40 in bench minutes and top 40 in pace. So will Hofstra wear down? And can they kind of slow it down a little bit? But I would tend to agree. There's a couple concerns matchup wise that I have, but part of me, if the team that's not deep that plays Charleston, I would worry about them, getting in foul trouble. But Hofstra, with their defensive style, they don't really get in foul trouble. And I would agree. I think this is the time probably to sell on Charleston. So yeah, I have the Hofstra circled as well.
On top of that, you look at the comps when Charleston's played a top 4 team in the CAA. They beat UNC Wilmington by 2. They beat Towson by 2 in overtime. So yes, they're one of the best stories going in college basketball, 20 in a row, top 20 in the AP poll, all this great stuff. But they've been flirting with, not a disaster, but they've been flirting with at least some losses here in conference play. So eventually, I do think the hammer is going to fall. It's difficult to, have such a good record in close games in conference.
Yeah, it's a high variance team. So like even if they have they're going to shoot a lot of threes. So, but I would agree this is probably the right time. All right, so I'm going to make a claim that, and this is just kind of an overarching thought for Saturday. We have the Big 12 SEC Challenge, and I think the Big 12 is by far the best conference in college basketball, top to bottom. And I think that some of these bottom teams are really hurt by just the depth and just the night in and night out, and they're undervalued. So a team like Texas Tech, 0-8 in the Big 12, they're going up against LSU, 2 teams free falling, right? Going like this. LSU has been, I think that if you look at the underlying metrics, Texas Tech has been very unlucky in some aspects. They did get, they have, let me see what he gave them last game. AMAC didn't play for Texas Tech last game. I think there's a good chance he suits up here. But if you look at the underlying metrics on what LSU is doing on both ends of the floor, look at they're doing nothing well. There is nothing this team is doing well. And it was so telling to me with this LSU team. When they lost, they got embarrassed by Alabama. I mean, embarrassed. That's 106-66. Their next game, they're at home against Auburn, team that's not great on the road. They lost by 18. Okay, we get Tennessee at home. We lose by 21. Okay, we're at Arkansas. We score 40 points and lose by 20. This team
Yeah,
is,
the Arkansas game to me, that's the white flag moment on the season. I mean,
yep.
you can talk up these other teams. I know that Auburn has some rough home away splits, and Tennessee's obviously a top 15 team for most of the season. But Arkansas just does not have the scoring punch or really the defensive focus in general to win by that much and to hold LSU that low. So I agree. I think this is a time when on paper, when the casual gambler is just looking at the win-loss record in conference play and say, okay, these are two dogs. If the big Maple suits up for Texas Tech, I think he could have a big game. So that's something to monitor for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And also, you just look, I mean, Texas Tech has not been great, but then this game, I think, will be right around a pick, I would assume. Maybe Texas Tech a small favorite. But from a matchup perspective, Texas Tech can force you into a lot of turnovers, which LSU will give you freely, willingly. And I also think that they'll dominate on the offensive glass, which you could do against LSU as well. Big coaching mismatch, and I think Texas Tech's going to be undervalued here going out of conference. So when you look at the bottom of the Big 12 versus the bottom of the SEC, so I'm going to go Texas Tech, and then I'll touch on a couple other of these of the Big 12 SEC teams in a sec, but I'll give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah, let's just stick with this Big 12 SEC challenge. It's a team you're probably not familiar with, Texas Christian. They're laying 12 here against Mississippi State. And beyond, the metrics being in love with the Horned Frogs, they're also just a great road team. They're 4-1 against the closing number on the road, covering by an average of 8 points per game. They're up to 10th in Ken Palm's adjusted defensive metric. And I think there's a little bit of the market maybe overcorrecting on Mississippi State giving Bama a good game. As I said, it wasn't that, they were closing out and suffocating on the perimeter. It's that Bama's three-pointers just didn't fall. So they end up blowing a 7-point halftime lead and losing outright, but covering. I think Mississippi State is a dog, no pun intended, and I think TCU is going to absolutely wipe the floor with them in this game. They're going to get into their running game and just run them out of the arena. So I don't mind laying 12 in this spot. I'd probably go up to 15. TCU in general, I think, is just, multiple levels of class better than Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mississippi State, they are pretty good in transition defense, but they're better in the half court, and they actually do let you get out into transition. So, and I don't care who you are, you're not defending TCU in transition. Like, you're just not. They're an NBA team in transition with the way that they can score. Let's stick with this theme. I'm gonna go. Let's go with West Virginia against Auburn. So I think West Virginia, two desperate teams at West Virginia Texas Tech game. West Virginia picks up the win on the road, and I think that they're what are they? They're 2-6 in the Big 12. It's crazy. I think they're up in the top 20 in KenPom now. Team that's been close in a lot of games that hasn't come out, but I think that win can really start a run for them. And this Auburn team, I still don't trust they're very erratic. And they lost in the jungle last night, but I still don't trust their guards on the road. And if you look, one of the reasons I love Texas A&M last night, all right, if you look at Auburn, what can they not do, right? Or what do they struggle with? They let you get a ton of offensive rebounds. So they're bad on the defensive glass. What else do? They foul a lot, and they turn the ball over too much with their erratic guards. So those are like the three. And then they also take poor shots, especially on the road. But those are the three things. They'll turn the ball over. They'll let you get offensive rebounds, and then they foul too much. All right, and Texas A&M can do all those things well. West Virginia, number 11 in free throw attempts per field goal attempt. They get to the line a ton. Number 22 in offensive rebounding. And they're a top 40 team in forcing turnovers. Those are the three primary strengths of West Virginia at home with one of the best home court advantages. So, I think this is a good spot to back the Mountaineers. And it's just a great matchup for them, similar to Texas A&M. And I'm going to trust the ears here at home in Morgantown. What do you got?
Well, my last one, I have a question for you in your backyard. What are your thoughts on Kansas, Kentucky? Two teams that really need this win. This could be kind of a defining season win for the Wildcats, potentially turn things around in terms of their upside. Whereas Kansas, they played hard in the final minutes against Baylor, but I think overall disappointment in a game that I thought, if Grady Dick had played well, they were going to win outright. He did. just everybody else kind of, fell on their sword. They couldn't figure out how to score from the perimeter. They had some weird turnovers. So I'm a little bit concerned at this point when Jalen Wilson's playing at the level he's playing at, and Grady Dick comes to play, and they're still losing games to quality opponents. So I'm just interested in your overall vantage point on this, Big 12 SEC game.
Yeah, I think that the correct spread should be right around a pick. I mean, I make Kentucky a small favorite here, but Kentucky's still, look, they beat Vandy, shorthanded Vandy. They beat Texas A&M at home. They beat Georgia at home. They got that win over Tennessee, which I think is a good matchup. But, they've been beating some teams at the bottom. So, again, I'm worried about this Big 12 SEC thing. And, has Kentucky really figured it out? Now, Reeves has been him shooting well is really big. And they're starting to figure things out. I don't know if they're all the way there yet. Desperate Kansas team off 3 straight losses. I mean, Self off a loss is incredible against the spread. I do think it's an alarming that they get blown out by TCU after a loss, and then after another loss, they lose to Baylor. So it's tough. This game is very tough for me. I think it's a pure stay away. I can make cases for both teams in desperation mode, and have a lot of respect for Self. And there's, from an in-game coaching adjustment standpoint, Kansas is going to have a huge advantage here.
Anything else on the national scene that you're looking forward to watching, even if it's just, to get a little more intel and color on some of these teams to maybe play them in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go to round out the Big 12 SEC stuff. I'm probably going to bet Texas against Tennessee. So Tennessee, who I'm still not a believer in as far as where the market has them. I mean, look, teams are now shooting 21.6% from 3. The record, I think we went over this, is 25.3 for a single season. If you look at unguarded shots, they lead the country. Teams are shooting 25% from 3 on unguarded threes. The record for a single season is 25%. Opponents are shooting 25% on open threes against Tennessee. Now, as my esteemed colleague and friend Jim Root had brought up on Twitter earlier today, the SEC can't shoot, though, which is contributing to part of this, right? Look at all the teams in the SEC that cannot shoot a lick. So there's some very poor shooting teams in the SEC. There's still regression coming for them, but that's part of it. There's not a lot of good shooting teams in the SEC. Now, Texas, 33, 34%, but they have shooters that will make open jumpers. Even Sir Jabari Rice is only shooting 30% from 3. He's a 34, 35% career 3-point shooter. Carr's probably a little over his average, but I project this team to be right around 35, right around 100th. It's not an elite shooting team, but they have guys who will make threes. And again, this is the Big 12 SEC gap that I think you're going to get value on Texas here as a road dog. But we're going to learn a lot about the Tennessee defense, and because I think it's a lot of luck, and then there's some SEC offenses are just slogs, and they just can't score consistently, which has buoyed Tennessee's defensive numbers. And then I think a lot of those bottom of the pack SEC teams that are struggling are buoying the top of the SEC, whereas the Big 12 is so deep that it's hurting the bottom. And that's why I think there's going to be some value on the Big 12 across the board, but especially these teams that aren't necessarily at the top of the Big 12 going up against the SEC. Let's see, Creighton, your Creighton boys. Do you have any thoughts there? I think it's a pretty good spot to get them against Xavier, who's coming off that really big emotional win against UConn. I mean, I still think Xavier has some defensive issues, and Sule Boom, I mean, he just couldn't miss. He hit every big 3 when they needed it, and that crowd got into it against UConn. I think this is a really good spot to get Creighton, who really could have easily won that game at Xavier, which went right down to the wire, and Xavier kind of pulled away late, but it was really neck and neck. But I think it's a pretty good spot for Creighton. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I like a same game parlay there. Take Creighton, take the over. I don't think they're going to slow this game down against the Xavier defense that, as you mentioned, is more than willing to give up a ton of points. I think UConn scored almost 50 in the second half.
Yeah, their guards have really big. They have guards have defensive issues for Xavier. That's what might hold them back in March.
So I think you can squeeze out a little, plus money by parlaying it together. That would be my angle in that game.
Wake Forest at home might have some different defensive team at home against NC State. Might look there. You want to get real crazy, buy low, sell high, Big 12 SEC, bottom Big 12. I got to put money where my mouth is. Oklahoma at home against Alabama. We'll see where the spread is, but there's some matchup issues I do like. Missouri at home against Iowa State. They should be healthy. They zone, they press, and Iowa State's been poor against both. So Cyclones are shooting over their heads in league play as well. Missouri doesn't turn it over. A lot of good things to like about Missouri. So that's my one exception of SEC versus Big 12. Let me see what else I had.
I'm going to go over in that Arkansas Baylor game. Baylor really, as I mentioned, down the stretch against Kansas, like you could get to the rim anytime that you wanted. You know, Jalen Wilson is going to be in the running for Big 12 Player of the Year, but he's not exactly the most explosive player off the dribble. And he was just getting right to the 10 whenever he wanted down the stretch, almost carried them all the way back in that game. When you look at what Anthony Black can do out of the point guard position, if he stays out of foul trouble and limits his turnovers a little bit, I think this could be an up and down game. So obviously it's going to depend on the total, but that's just something I had circled as a potential shootout in this non-con matchup.
Like that. I'll mention, we're going to get uglier. I mentioned Oklahoma, Alabama. Let's get even uglier than that. Let's go Louisville, who inexplicably didn't cover against Boston College. They lost by 10, somehow catching 9.5. They were up, I think, double digits and melted down. I think that Louisville we might get them at they've basically been unbettable. They are down now. They're outside the top 300 in KenPom. That was a big watch in Louisville. Outside the top 300, Louisville basketball. That's insane. But they're going to play Notre Dame. They'll probably be catching double digits at Notre Dame. This is a Notre Dame team that cannot defend at all. And here's the thing and they'll run some zone. Louisville's offense has actually been not the worst thing in the world against zone. They've been terrible against man. Look, why does Louisville suck so bad? Why? I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but they turn it over on almost every possession. They are 361st in turnover percentage in the country.
Unbelievable.
Do you know whose defense is 361st? Notre Dame. So Notre Dame forces 0 turnovers. And so, and look, they're going to have some athletic advantages at spots here. They can get to the rim a little bit. They're, it's
all right. Well,
Notre Dame's not going to get any offensive rebounds.
Where's the cutoff for you here? Do you need 15? Do you need 12?
No, it's not going to be that. I would like to get, I would like to get 12. And Louisville's been like, they're just so inconsistent and they'll just melt down. And they've shown some improvement recently, like just for stretches. And then they'll end up getting blown out. They end up melting down. There's a lot of issues, and a lot of them come to turnovers. So I'm counting on them not turning it over a ton here against a Notre Dame team that just simply won't turn you over. And then another one, if you go, a lot of people always talk about this luck metric on KenPom, which is basically just looks like the win probability of your games that you won versus what you should have won. UNC Asheville is number 1 by far, which I could have guessed. And last night, guess what they did? They won another game in overtime. They beat Gardner-Webb in overtime.
Pember is out of control. Pember single-handedly murdered me in my college fantasy matchup this week. I was like, well, I can close the laptop now. I'm not going to win. The guy is an absolute stat sheet stuffer.
He had 48. If you're wondering, it's Presbyterian last night. He is an absolute monster, capable of doing that. He's a Tennessee transfer. And man, Tennessee, if he was on Tennessee right now, he could fill it up. But this is a team that's been down double digits routinely in the second half. And they play Campbell on the road. Campbell, the Fighting Camels, coming off a big road win at High Point. This is a Campbell team that was up 18 in the second half at UNC Asheville earlier in January. They're up 18 in the second half, and they lost by 3. Their defensive issues schematically are things that UNC Asheville won't exploit. So I actually like this matchup. They'll grind this game down. That first game was 58-55. I think Campbell's going to pick off UNC Asheville. Pember's amazing. They're also shooting way over their. I mean, Asheville's shooting 39% from 3 in league play, and they're holding opponents at 29%. So there's some shooting regression here, and I think Campbell's going to pick them off. This Asheville team keeps getting down double digits in the second half. They keep coming back. Now Pember is amazing and can be a part of that, but I think their run ends here. So let's go with some Camels. That's all I got for Saturday. You got anything else you want to
That's it for
Mitchell?
me. I do wish there was an advanced metric because I love the logic that you're laying out with Louisville against a Notre Dame defense that is not disruptive, doesn't turn anybody over. I wonder how many unforced turnovers Louisville coughs up per game. You know, the alley-oop that goes into the third row or dribbling off your knee. Because I do think that comes into play where it's like Notre Dame, just by being folding chairs on the defensive end, does Louisville still turn it over 12 times in this game?
Yes, they'll still turn it over. They're 363rd in non-steal turnover percentage. It's 363rd. So they're still going to turn it over, but it's just not going to be as frequent. And like they're going to have an athletic advantage here at certain positions. I think that they'll be able, Notre Dame's not going to get any offensive rebounds, not that they try. I don't know. It feels like this is the spot to get Louisville, but I don't know. Who is there ever really a spot to get this team outside the top 300? Incredible. But this Notre Dame team also does not defend. Like they're just not a good defensive team. They run some great offense. They don't turn the ball over as well. That's just the fear here, is that Notre Dame doesn't turn over to Louisville. If they are just turning, like the free possessions are all going to go Notre Dame's way, but might get an inflated number here. We shall see. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks as always to Mike for joining me. BJ, we'll see you on Monday for the Monday night preview and weekend recap. Thanks to Mr. Jim Root, my guy, for joining us and obliging for our TCU addition to the futures portfolio. But make sure you subscribe, leave a review. We'll do giveaways. Let's do giveaways Monday. If you leave any reviews this week, 5-star review, just say whatever you want. And those really help us out. Big Bets on Campus Live. We'll be back early February. More details to come Saturday mornings, myself and the guys from the 3-Man Weave. Make sure you check their episodes out midweek. We'll be back on Monday as always. Good luck this weekend with whatever you bet. Make sure you download the We're Putting Action Network app to follow all of our plays. And we'll see you on Monday. Cheers.